I haven't seen a real push to get Americans healthier, to strengthen their immune system, to improve their health and fitness so that they can not only combat COVID, but any other virus that they may get. Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to Masters in Fitness Business Podcast, where you get to stand on the shoulders of giants. And today I am bringing my counterpart in. This is Jack Thomas. He runs Fitness Business Asia podcast, and he's also a gym owner. He owns Base Gym. They have 3 locations throughout Asia. He's based in Bangkok. They were the Asian Gym of the Year in 2018 in the Class Pass Studio of Bangkok just recently. So he is my Asian clone, I guess. He's originally from the UK, now lives in Bangkok and owns and operates 3 gyms there and runs Fitness Business Asia. So we thought we'd do a joint podcast, and this is going to be a little bit different in that I'm not necessarily going to be interviewing him. We're just going to have a conversation and be comparing the 2 markets between the US and the Asian market. So, and he has a quite a bit more diversity in his market than I do because he's in Asia. So I'm curious to get into it. But Jack, welcome to the show. Did I miss anything?
No, you pretty much covered it, Jim. Thank you for the intro. And yeah, just great to connect with other podcasters, gym owners from around the world. So yeah, this should be an interesting chat. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So how long have you had the gyms, and how long have you had the podcasts over there?
So I set up Base coming on 5 years. It was August 2016. We opened our first location. I've been in the fitness industry here coming on 10 years. Can't believe how long it's been. It's really flown by. And then the podcast, we started about 2.5 years ago, but it was about 6 months in when we made the commitment to put out an episode every single week, which was quite a big step for us. It kind of helped us to get some consistency, helped us to build up some more listeners, and it's really helped to connect with a lot of people such as yourself. We kind of started off with people just in Asia, fitness industry leaders from the region, so it was really great to kind of connect with people close to home. And then it was during lockdown 1 that I jumped on Zoom and started doing my first kind of international podcasts and calls. So that's been really cool and gives me the opportunity to meet people such as yourself.
Yeah. So
how about yourself, Jim? How long the podcast been going for?
Well, I've had my gym for going on 6 years and the podcast going on 5 years. We opened the gym April 2015, and then I started the podcast March of 2016. And I still run the day-to-day in the gym. I just have 1 location. And so I do release the podcast every other week, but I've been talking to some people, and we're going to bump it up to weekly releases. So,
okay, nice.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to scratch my own itch, basically. I'm a gym owner I'm a trainer who became a gym owner who was a great trainer and was a terrible business owner. And so I needed to fix that. So I'm a big believer in mentorships and learning from other people. So I just wanted to get the most successful people in the industry, get them on the show and pick their brain and share that information with other people that are in my shoes.
Has it helped your gym operation?
Tremendously. That in getting mentors. I mean, I have to give Thomas Plummer, Rick Mayo, Frank Nash, Secret Trainer Society. Those are the mentors and the group that I belong to that have made the biggest impact. But I've definitely learned from a lot of the guests on the show of what to do and what not to do. And the little details matter, man. That's what.
Yeah, funnily enough, it was Thomas Plummer's podcast that first introduced me to your show. That was how I first found out about the Masters and Fitness Business podcast. Great guy. I'm hoping to get him on my podcast as well. Someone actually offered to introduce us, and that was when I searched and found yours. So yeah, it was actually through listening to podcasts that I first decided to set one up, because I was listening to some great ones from the States, Australia, UK, and I was like, no one's doing this in Asia. Someone needs to do it. And for the same reasons as you, it's been, definitely a fruitful journey.
Well, I'd be happy to introduce you to Tom and get him on your show. Yeah,
awesome.
Absolutely.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, because I just talked to him last week, and his deal is that he does seminars. He does the National Fitness Business Alliance, and now it's aligned with Perform Better. But he's on plane 47 weeks out of the year. In 2020 he was at home, so he's just at home just going crazy. So he'd probably love to jump on the podcast.
Yeah, please introduce us. That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me a little bit. I'm curious about the market over there, because you're in Bangkok, right?
Correct.
But so where does your podcast reach in Asia?
So most of our listeners are in the main fitness markets in Asia. The two primary markets are Hong Kong and Singapore, and they would probably be, not quite as built up, let's say, as sort of LA or New York, but I think it'd be pretty similar to kind of your second tier cities in the UK and the US. There's a lot happening there. There's a lot of international franchises going there, tons of options, CrossFit, F45, Barry's Bootcamp, Orange Theory, all that kind of stuff. And then you've got your secondary markets such as Thailand, Malaysia. So most of the boutique studios, most of the top gyms are in KL, and then Philippines has got an emerging scene as well. So most of our listeners are there, but then we have a few listeners in Cambodia. We hit the top 10 entrepreneurship podcasts there. Myanmar as well, and Vietnam. Very, very young, very immature markets. Very interesting just how slowly they move, how slowly the markets develop compared to, say, Bangkok. Now, when I first got in the industry here, there was pretty much no boutique scene. And before I set up base, we set up pretty much the first high-end premium boutique fitness training facility in Bangkok. And in the last 10 years, just kind of seeing it really explode and develop. So it's a really exciting time here in Asia. Lots changing, lots happening. I'm very excited about the future of the industry here. And, I think base is well positioned to kind of ride that wave post-COVID. I do predict a bit of a boom here. We're quite a long way behind the States, but we're definitely like catching up. I'd say our growth here is definitely faster.
Well, I can definitely tell you that I am jealous. I mean, because you open up in a brand new market. I mean, just crystal clear water to start with, and we're able to take advantage of that. Because here in the U.S., I mean, since COVID, it's changed a little bit. COVID's changed everything, but I mean, with my studio, I could probably name 15 competitors within 3 miles of my club. So it's a very competitive market here. And COVID has changed that, as like Warren Buffett, has said, his famous quote is, "You don't know who's swimming without a suit until the tide goes out." Well, COVID made the tide go out, and we saw a lot of people swimming in their skivvies, and they've gone under. What type of changes have you seen over there because of COVID?
It's interesting you should say that. I think because it's a more mature market in the States and it's a more mature market in Singapore, we've seen more casualties. I think when it's sort of somewhat saturated or there's a lot of offerings, I think you're going to see quite a quick turnover of gyms and studios. And I think from what I've seen, COVID's really just sort of sped that up. Whereas I think in Thailand, in our particular space, you've kind of got a few strong players, not really much else going on, and all of those strong players are still here. Now, who knows if that's going to be the case sort of 6, 12, 18 months down the line. But in our particular space, there's been no big casualties. Now, although that sounds fantastic, not having like too many players, the flip side to that is that it's a very low penetration rate. So like in Singapore, for example, everyone can afford it. It's only 4 million people, but just to put some perspective into it, F45 has 40 locations around the city, whereas in Bangkok they have one. They've just opened up a second one. So it's a small market, even though there's not many competitors. So I kind of think if we can get in early, establish ourselves, we can do well in the future as the penetration rate increases. But yeah, there's definitely pros and cons to that. I mean, how's it been where you are? Has there been any full-on casualties, like gyms that have closed?
Yeah, not any of the big players, like the Orange Theories, F45s, Barry's Boot Camps, but a lot of the smaller players and some of the bigger players. I mean, here in St. Louis, Gold's Gym closed all their locations. So Gold's Gym is no longer in St. Louis. So some of the bigger players have taken a hit, kind of contracted, but I think everybody's done that. Everybody's kind of contracted and try to get skinnier. And by skinnier, I mean just running leaner, man, trimming the fat, and COVID was a good opportunity to do that, let go of employees that were kind of questionable. And we talked about that before, in reducing expenses. A lot of people took out PPP loans and EIDL loans to help them through. So everybody's just trying to get skinnier. I think the biggest mistake, well, I'll call it a mistake. The biggest mistake that a lot of studios here stateside have made is in that contraction, they've eliminated their marketing budget. And so right now it's harder to get clients than ever before. And a lot of the big boot camps, it's kind of interesting because I think a lot of the big, large group class offerings, they attract younger people, right? And so younger people tend to be a little bit more apathetic about the virus. And so those people, I mean, they still come in, not like they did, but those gyms tend to be doing better. And then personal training, like semi-private and private small group personal training, is starting to grow more for the older segment because they want that. They still want to prioritize their fitness, especially during COVID, but they want that one-on-one or smaller ratio, less people, more sanitation, more coaching, things like that. So has that?
Do you think that there's been a renewed focus in health and fitness is actually driving people to the gym? People keep asking me that, and I don't think we've quite seen it yet. I.e., the person that's maybe 15 kg overweight and is like, COVID could be around for another 12 or 18 months. I better shift some weight here, and then I'll actually be, at lower risk to this thing. I don't think we've quite seen that, really. I think if anything, we see people cooped up at home who just want a bit more excitement back in their life. So they're like, right, let's do it. But it's not a shift that I've really seen yet, and I kind of hope we do long term. How's it been over there?
The exact same. And, I can get on my soapbox on this all day long because, most of the people that pass away from COVID are either older or they have underlying conditions. And I haven't seen a real push to get Americans healthier, to strengthen their immune system, to improve their health and fitness so that they can not only combat COVID, but any other virus that they may get. Instead, I've seen people, like you said, cooped up and waiting for the vaccine and just cooped up in their house and afraid of any and all viruses, So I don't think we've done a good job, and one of my mentors, Rick Mayo, he always says that here stateside, and I don't know how it is in Asia, but here stateside, only about roughly 20%, give or take a percentage of the American population work out. And so that means a full 80% don't. And we haven't done a real good job of penetrating that market, from a perspective point of view, from a marketing point of view, from a service delivery, all of those things. We haven't done a really good job of penetrating that market and making an impact on those people's lives. So I think it's a two-pronged issue. I think the fitness industry falls short in that because we can get into kind of an echo chamber, right? Where we hang out with people like us, hang out with people who work out all the time, hang out with people who are into health and fitness. And we tend to think that everybody should be like that and everybody should be like us. And then it becomes harder for us to view it through the other side of the lens of that 80% who have never worked out, but want to work out, want to lose weight, but, are terrified of stepping into the gym, don't even know what to wear to the gym or what to do when they go into the gym. So the fitness industry, I don't think has done a really good job of getting that message out. And then I think just in general,
it's a big opportunity, right, for gym owners.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And then I think from like a public policy standpoint, they haven't done a really good job of doing it. They haven't done a really good job of saying, hey, you need to improve your health and nutrition and your fitness, maybe lose some weight, kind of get on top of these underlying conditions like diabetes. I things like that. From a public policy standpoint, we've fallen short. So I think it's a combination of factors. But what I see here is people afraid to come into the gym and just want to stay home until they get the vaccine.
It's interesting you should say that, because there was a bit of a turning point in our marketing about 6 months in. So at the beginning, Base is a city center gym. It's typically a bit of a younger crowd, I would say, and it's quite like a cool facility. We got our neon sign as you come through the door, and the music and the coach and everything else. So it is very much about the experience. But that being said, certainly our personal training side, we really are for everyone. My previous role, my previous position in the studio I used to work for, the money is really from the older people who are less healthy, less fit. And those are the people that really most need our help as well. So definitely wanted to put the message out that Base was for them. But I didn't really consider that message at the very beginning. It was all like, young guys doing human flags with their tops off, like muscle ups, all this kind of thing. And I thought it looked great. And it did, it looked sexy, it looked cool, and definitely kind of hit that younger market. But people were saying they were intimidated by Base. And someone actually said, I look through the Instagram and all I see is like ripped young people. And I looked at it, I was like, yeah, that's absolutely true. This is really going to scare off a lot of the people that we really actually want to help. And, it's actually a really big opportunity here as well. So we just started tweaking our marketing, and especially when we ran specific programs, to help people get started, to help people make strong nutritional choices, to start exercising again. We just pretty much changed the imagery. We did have some clients that had gone through their own journey, didn't look ripped, weren't doing muscle ups. We just started to tell the stories of those people and the journeys that they went through, and really specifically like step by step, like how they felt before they came into Base. They came with their friend, they trained with them, the first workout was difficult for them, but they made sure they came back the next day or the next week and they started to enjoy it a little bit more. And 3 months, 6 months later, they've seen a complete change. And by telling the stories of those clients had a massive impact on our business. We had one coach recently that wanted to train more elderly people. He had a couple of elderly clients, and he just really enjoyed helping them have a better quality of life. Started taking photos of them training, with their permission, of course. Started taking videos, little conversations that we had with them, we post on social media, and just start to kind of get that story out. And we do still have imagery of like, young people doing difficult things as well. But by mixing it up, it really had a huge impact on our business.
Yeah. I mean, because I think, and I've been guilty of this, I think one of the biggest mistakes that I see young trainers and young fitness business owners make is that, and I see it all the time when I go on LinkedIn and try to build, connections for the podcast, is that you see trainers saying, hey, I'm a personal trainer, and it's a picture of them with their shirt off, 6-pack abs, or in the booty shorts and things like that. And I think that's part of that echo chamber. And the biggest turning point for a lot of fitness business and a lot of trainers is when they realize that people don't care about what they can do and what they look like. What they care about is what you can do for them, and do you understand them? I mean, that was brought home to me because I've been fit my whole life. My whole life, I've been active. I've played sports. I've worked out in some capacity. So I've never been overweight or out of shape for long. I mean, there's been stretches where I've had surgeries or whatever, but I've never been out of shape for long. And then I had a client, this guy started training. He goes, I want my wife to come in. Good. So we worked on getting his wife in for, 6 months. And so finally she comes in, and she's overweight, and she comes in my office and she sits down and she says, yeah, I didn't want to come in here. I said, well, why not? He goes, because all of you, meathead trainers, and everybody's in shape and looking good. And that's not me. And that's not who I want to be. I just want to lose some weight and be a little bit healthier. And I told her, I go, well, you're exactly who I want in here. And I need your help, because I need to see through your eyes so that I could change my imagery, my marketing, and my service delivery to get more people just like you, because you are the people that I want in here, because you are the people that we can make the biggest impact on your life. And so we wound up becoming really good friends, and she helped me quite a bit, and she wound up losing 100 pounds. But more than that, she helped me see through the 80%'s eyes, because I couldn't, because I've never been there. So I have no perspective. So I had to rely on her, and she helped me quite a bit because she's, brutally honest, and a great person. And so she helped me quite a bit, and we've become really good friends. But again, it's all about mentorship, right? So I needed a mentor to help me see through that population's eyes, because I wasn't able to do it. And that really changed the atmosphere of our gym. So when people come in, because there were literally people that came in that had never worked out, and they're like, well, what do I wear to work out? They don't even own workout clothes, and they don't know what to work out in. So just little things like that. But when they come in and they see people just like them in there trying to do the same thing, then they relax a little bit. I mean,
Developing a relationship like that, it kind of helps you to build that avatar, right? Like, say her name is Susan, like every time you're talking to Susan, and by having that relationship, by having those conversations with her, just kind of helps you build up in your head, like, what's her pain points? Like, what was she scared of? Where, even like, where does she shop? Where does she hang out? And by having someone like that and kind of going through that journey, I think it makes it much easier to target your marketing down the line, for sure. I
yeah,
think
it
as
made
well
it.
for the trainers as well that have the six-pack abs, I think what they're doing, and I kind of maybe fell into this trap a bit when I first got in the industry, like, I'm going to help guys like me get ripped, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, and there is a market for it, but it's just such
Yeah,
a busy space in the industry. There
it
are
really
so
is.
many guys that do that, right? Ripped, six-pack. So it's, all power to you. Good luck if that's what you want to go for. But I think it's worth just taking a step back as a new trainer and thinking, is that the market I want to go for? Is that going to pay the bills? Is that even going to be rewarding for me? The coach that we have at base, who kind of wants to train with more elderly people, he's doing incredibly well because he's pretty much the only coach that seeks out those kind of people. So they tell their friends about it. Obviously, we do our marketing stuff as well. And, he really enjoys it. I think it's just like a bit too easy. I train, I'm in good shape, so I want to get other guys like me to train and be in good shape as well. I think just going a layer deeper, I think, is better business, and I think can actually be a bit more rewarding as well, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. So you said one thing in our earlier conversation that I was curious about. Like when you first opened Base, you said most of your membership was expats, English speaking expats, and then now you're starting to get some more of the Thailanders in. So in the fitness market, is it mainly like expats and English speaking people, or do you see more kind of local people making their way in?
Yeah, so yeah, that's an interesting point, and I'll take a bit of a step back for that. So when I first got in the industry 10 years ago, I was working for a very small studio. I don't really know if you'd call it a boutique. It was kind of a converted office space, and we used to do park boot camps, which the Thais did not want to go anywhere near. It was kind of army crawling through the mud and all this kind of stuff, which the foreigners loved, but the Thais didn't like so much. And we were kind of the first studio space to introduce like TRX training, kettlebell training. So we had some real strong, powerful differentiators, and we were about 98% expat. So a couple of Thais came in every now and again, and even then, usually they kind of studied abroad. Perhaps they were born abroad, something like that. So really very little of the local market. When we set up the lab, which was kind of the first sort of high-end premium studio, that would have been just over 9 years ago, pretty much overnight, Thais started coming, and that was because it just looked cooler. It was in a better location. It had big floor-to-ceiling windows, like right in the heart of the city. Instagram was just starting to become big at that point, and it was like very Instagrammable, the studio. And just overnight, we went to about 30% Thais, and that was really interesting. They were just coming in almost every day, just asking to do personal training, which was something that we just hadn't experienced before. And it just sort of snowballed from there. Really picked up quickly. We had TV shows coming in. We had magazines come in and do features on the studio because it was so different. And over time, over about a year or two, we shifted to around about 50-50, which was just awesome because, the expat community doesn't grow that quickly. But if you can suddenly tap into the local market, well, 10 million people in Bangkok, I don't know, maybe 300,000 expats. So suddenly you've got 9.7 million people that you could potentially market to. And it just sort of exploded from there in a way that it hadn't done before. It was very stagnant before. And since then, it's just grown. more and more Thais have come into the industry. Our CBD location is about 80% Thai now, 20% foreigner. And then we have one in a more residential area, which is still predominantly Thai. I think it's about 35-40% expats. So it's been really interesting to observe that shift over the last 10 years or so. And that's really where the opportunity has come from, especially now because many expats have been pushed outside of Thailand back home. So if we didn't have the local market, we'd be in serious trouble. But actually, another interesting thing that we've seen as a very international city is that our PT numbers have been very good. Few reasons for that. One is, of course, it's seen as being a safer environment. But two, we've got a lot of clients that traveled for business a lot or traveled for pleasure. Now they're all stuck in Bangkok. So actually, we didn't get many people coming in, but now our clients aren't going out. And so I think that's really played a part in being in an international city, in like building up our PT. So, as you can see from that story, like it's just opened up the market massively in a way that would have just been impossible with expats only. It's just kind of been cool to be a part of that as well.
Yeah, it couldn't have been just the facility. It had to be, I'm sure it's a combination of factors, but it couldn't have been just the facility and, well, Instagram with the marketing I get, but what other changes did you make to get, is there a language barrier? Did you have to get more Thai employees that spoke the language, or what was that like? What do you think that was?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It wasn't just the location for sure. I think it did play a big part. It kind of became a trend, and I think Thailand is quite trend-based. I think getting some Thai coaches certainly helped with that as well, but also having that international vibe also helps a lot. But actually, I think it's just honestly a more of a renewed focus in health and fitness in general. And I think, we were just sort of one small part in that happening. When I first came here, the first sort of international style chain gym opened up. It's closed down now, but we have many other chains that have come in. I'd say that's kind of like the first step to Thais even understanding what it meant to have a gym membership. Like that wasn't really a thing like when I first came here to Thailand in 2003. And so that was kind of like the first step in health and fitness just being a concept, just something that they even consider doing. And then kind of step by step, it's become something that's, okay, we know what that means now to have a gym membership. And then like, actually, this looks quite fun. I want to go with my friends. I want to tell my friends that I go to the gym. And then now it's, you see people in Lululemon pants, on the SkyTrain in Bangkok. And it's a real, I don't really like this word. I think it's a bit of a buzzword, but it's a real sort of lifestyle thing. Like people are proud to train at base. They're proud to go to the local rhythm cycling studio or the Fitness First big box or whatever it might be. So, part of that's been trend focused, but also there's been definitely a renewed focus in just being strong, being healthy. Like another big positive thing that we've seen in the industry is when I first got into the industry, no females would really want to do strength training. It's the whole classic, I'm going to get bulky, I'm going to get big. I'd rather use a 2 kg dumbbell and get toned, all of that nonsense, right? And so over the years, we've really seen that develop and change. And, when we've had sort of our very focused strength training classes, we have a few powerlifting classes at base, majority female, majority Thai. And that's been really cool. With the sort of trend stuff, the Instagram stuff has actually come more education and more people actually willingly jumping in and wanting to get fit, wanting to get strong, not even worried about being bulky. Some of our clients have even competed in powerlifting meets and competitions. So that's been really, really cool. And I kind of feel it's just sort of happened step by step. First chain gym opens people's eyes to having a gym membership. Then people saw it as more of an interesting thing to do. And then over time, it's like, oh, actually, I want to be real fit. I want to be real strong. Spartan race, for example, has come over here. People want to do Spartan races. Now they want to crawl through the mud. They didn't want to do it 10 years ago, but now they're doing it. And that's, really great. That's really cool to see. I don't want base. I don't want fitness to just be a trend or a fad. I want it to be something that people really throw themselves into. And that's been, again, really cool to kind of witness and see. Of course, where you are, it's more mature, right? People have been used to this kind of training for a while.
Yeah. But, it's still about creating that community and reinforcing your brand and creating some pride and some buzz in your brand that people want to be a part of. They want to be a part of your tribe. I think that's still really important. It's a little bit harder during COVID, obviously, because you can't do the high fives at the end of the class. You can't breathe hard and sweat next to one another and all of that good stuff. But I think it's still important. Pre-COVID, the biggest thing was that every gym wanted to be their client's third place, because you got work, you got home, and then you got some other place where you hang out, whether that be the bar or, you know, whatever, but people wanted that to be the gym. And I think that's still true, but I think the gyms that have made that transition to online have done that a little bit better. But
How have you done with
what,
that, Jim? How have you done with the online stuff? Did you switch?
well, we did switch. We do offer online coaching, and we switched back in March when we first shut down. And from March to July, we were fully online, and we got really skinny with the staff. But I would say the bulk of our clients stayed with us online or stayed paying their memberships, which we were really grateful for. But now that we've come back, we just made this switch. It was a really interesting change because our model is based on small group training. You know, all of our price points, my payroll, all of that is based on a trainer working on the floor and training 3 or 4 clients at once. And the people that stayed online, they were getting private and semi-private. So we were losing money for it, but we were able to absorb it because of the federal stimulus. But we just can't absorb it anymore. So we had to kind of force their hand. So we gave them 3 choices. We have this video-driven app that we can build custom workouts in, the Trainerize app.
Okay.
And so we give them that option at a low price point with a weekly Zoom coach update. And they can do that. And there's accountability and nutrition built into the app as well, because when they complete the workout, we can log in and see that they've done it. And if they have any questions, they can leave comments, things like that. So we offer that one. And then we also offer them the ability to train online while a trainer is also training clients on the floor. And we'll offer that at the same price point at their current membership. But if they want to, and we did the numbers, if we charge them private and semi-private rates, it would be over 100% increase in their membership cost. So we didn't want to do that. So we agreed on a 22% price increase, hoping that the majority would switch to the middle option where the price would be the same. And we just rolled this out this week, so I don't know how it's going to turn out. I'm already starting to get phone calls from clients, but it's a handful. But we need to make that situation work, and we need to make it profitable for us. So it was a tough decision, but it was one that had to be made. And then I also find it interesting that a lot of the clients that quit because of COVID still haven't come back, and we're going on a year since, you know, COVID has happened. What we did, we started going after new clients. You know, we went aggressive we went after the clients who are willing to come in. So we went aggressive with our marketing. We got some new marketing software with automation that has been a game changer. And so we're just going after the new clients who are willing to come in. And so far that formula has been working for us. So for a while we were trying to recapture our old clients, but the reality is they're just not going to come back until they feel safe.
You think that's what it is? Do you think there's any element of laziness in there? So
no
I think,
question.
yeah, I think we definitely saw it the first lockdown for sure. And I know because I had conversations with people about it. We were closed for 2.5 months, and we had a few people that wanted to continue freezing their packages, and we were very flexible with that. But then there was like another subsection of the client base, which I know just hadn't done anything for 2.5 months and just weren't ready to come back. And we've actually just opened up for the second time. We've just come out of our second lockdown. Literally yesterday was the first full day of offering classes and personal training together.
Oh, congrats.
And for sure, thank you. And for sure, there was a lot of people that just haven't trained for 3 weeks and like, I'm going to give it another few weeks, and that turns into another few months. And so we went through the same thing as you, for sure. You know, I would say it got to the stage where, yeah, maybe 10% of people was just still not comfortable. You know, it's quite common in Asia to live with elderly relatives. So it's, you know, it's understandable. You know, in the end, we had months of like very low or 0 cases. So it pretty much went back to full capacity. And then like yourself, you know, we brought in, you know, new members as well. There was definitely people that, you know, either whether it was because they had a renewed focus on their health or whether they just kind of wanted something to do. We had like definitely a lot of new clients coming in, which I didn't really expect. I thought when we opened up, I didn't think new people would be comfortable coming into a brand new environment they hadn't seen before. So it's all very encouraging. And actually, that's another theory that I have as to why personal training numbers have been good. Because if you have 3 months out, your PT can give you a call and say, come on, let's do this. Come in. I got a slot for you. Your Tuesday 10 a.m. is back. Get your ass in here and let's get started. Whereas group classes, it's largely down to them to kind of make that decision. I mean,
Right.
I've heard of some gyms calling all of their clients. We didn't do that, but I think that's actually a really good idea. We probably should have done that, I think. Obviously we have the usual stuff, social media, email marketing, all of that kind of stuff that we put a lot into. But actually, I think that's a good shout to just call every single one. Just sit down with a few staff and just call them one by one. How are you feeling? Do you want to freeze your membership any longer? Are you ready to come back? I'm teaching the class this evening at 6 p.m. I'd love to see you there. I think that kind of goes a long way. Well, what did you, Jim, to bring your members back after you opened up?
Well, it's funny that you say that because I find that it's really hard, and I do think it's a generational thing. I find it really hard to get my employees to actually call people on the phone. They're like, well, can't we send a text or an email? I'm like, yes, you can, but it's not as effective as a phone call. And it's just hard to relay that to them. And so
do you think that's a sort of millennial thing? Do you think that's like a younger generation thing, perhaps?
I do think it's a generational thing.
I think it's a lost art, just getting on the phone, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, if you get a personal training lead through, give them a call. Do not send them a message. It's a lot easier to ignore a message, and you can't really inspire them over a message. You can't sell the dream, right?
Right, exactly. Because it's like, I liken it to dating. You're not going to, agree to a date, or continue dating over a text or an email. You're going to have to either have a telephone conversation or in-person conversation, so they can kind of get the feel and the energy and all of those things before they commit to, let's go out, and it's the same with, joining a gym or personal training. They're not going to agree just for, over an email or text. You're going to have to call them and talk to them and kind of get into the emotion that's driving them to reach out into the first place to get them.
I would actually go a step further with that. I mean, I completely agree, but I would actually go a step further. I think we have an obligation to do it. That person could have been waiting 6 months. They could be pre-diabetic. They could be 20 kg overweight. They might have finally got the guts to fill out that form. Yep. You know what? Jim looks great. I'm going to send the message through. I'm going to send the fill out the form. They wait, they get a message. Oh, we'd love to come and see you for consultation. Consultation, that sounds a bit scary. Don't really want to do that. Oh, I'm just going to ignore it. Maybe a follow-up message, maybe not. And then they disappear off the face of the earth. And, maybe their life doesn't get better. As opposed to giving them a call. Thank you for taking the time to send it through. I appreciate it's not an easy thing to do. You said here that you haven't trained before. Let's have a little chat about where you're at. We'd love to help you out. And that person's suddenly like, wow, this person cares. Jack cares. Jim cares. They want to bring us into the gym. They want to help. And I think it's more than just business. We do genuinely have an obligation to that person, I think. And to keep, contacting them until they either agree to come in or they just say, no, thank you.
Yeah. And I agree. And I think a lot of what I found is that the staff thinks, well, I don't want to bug them. I said, well, keep following up with them, call them.
Did they give their telephone number? If
Exactly.
they gave their telephone number, they're happy to be called. I've never had anyone who's given their telephone number said, why the hell are you calling me? It hasn't happened once.
Yeah. I mean, because to your point, we have an obligation because like you said, they've raised their hand and said, hey, I'm interested. So we have an obligation to reach out to them and say, hey, what are you looking for? I hope that we can help you. I hope that you feel like we're the right place for you. Come on in. We'd love to see what we can do for you. So we have an obligation when they've raised their hand. It's not like it's not like we're Jehovah's Witnesses, just, knocking on doors, saying, hey, I'd like to spend a few moments talking to you about your Lord and Savior. But, so we have an obligation. They've expressed the willingness. And I think a lot of times, number one, here in the States, if you call somebody and they don't recognize the number, 99% of the time they won't answer the phone. So you leave that voicemail. And I got this from Eric Russell, one of the guests on the podcast. He's a specialist in gym membership sales. Great guy. But he said that, when you call, leave a message and say, hey, if you don't get a chance to call me back, no worries. I know you're busy, which is why I'm calling you. I'll call you back so I can stay on top of your inbox. And so that takes the pressure off, because when you call and you leave a message and say, hey, give me a buzz back, and then you call back again, they're like, oh shit, I didn't call that guy back. Oh, I don't want to talk to him now. And there's that whole like barrier there. So, but if you leave that just little things, no worries if you don't get a chance to call me back. I know you're busy. I'll buzz you back. And then after a while, they kind of recognize the number, kind of recognize you, and their chances of picking up the phone are a little bit higher. So that's why I always drill into my staff that you need to follow up with them with a phone call several days in a row.
I mean, I get it. It's been a journey for me. I don't know how it's been for you, Jim, but when I first got in the industry, I did find that hard. I really had to reframe it in my mind. I'd be lying if it always became, if I said it was always comfortable for me. I mean, it really wasn't. But, you know, once I started to see the value in what we offered, to be honest, you know, a year or two in, when I was like, man, I thought we were expensive, but actually we offer an incredible service, and I work my ass off for my clients. You know, I really want to see them develop, and I'm getting them results, and I'm doing a lot of work outside of the hour as well. So actually, I think this price is completely okay. And then once I started to feel that, it became easier to have the conversation. And so now it's kind of my job as, you know, the CEO of Base, to kind of inspire the team to understand that as well, and to get it, that we have an obligation, that it's not really sales, it's service, that they've contacted us, they want help, we've got to try and give that to them. And it has been a bit of a journey for me, but I think, you know, you said your staff find it difficult to call, and many of mine do as well. I think if you go into the call with that mindset, they don't want to be called, I'm bugging them, how's that conversation going to go? Not particularly well, right? That's going to be difficult, and it's going to shine through. There's going to be no masking that. Whereas if you can truly believe in what you do and what you offer and the value of that, it just kind of makes that conversation a lot easier. Is there anything you do with your sales staff to kind of train them up and to get them shifting their mindset in the right way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because I love that, because, you know, I think the gyms that are doing well over here have good leadership. And I think that's leadership, because I always view it as you know, you always got to be selling. You know, you got to be selling your clients, you got to be selling yourself, and you got to be selling your staff. And so that's what I try to do. We have weekly staff meetings, and then I always send them things that I think will help motivate them, or at least see it from a different perspective. As far as you're not bugging them, you're actually helping them, because they really do want to come in. And really, I just, like you said, try to inspire them, try to get them to see the value in what they're offering these leads. And that's just, it's managing employees is difficult in the sense that you have to do it every day, you know, because at first you have to do it to reinforce it. And then later on down the road, you have to continue to do it so you don't get erosion of those principles or those ideals behind what has been a successful formula or system. And I think creating systems is huge. So, because I think for me, initially, I would train an employee on a system, right? Say following up on a lead, and then they would do it incorrectly or not quite the way that I wanted them to do it. And my first reaction was okay, get out of the way, let me do this, you know. And what I've learned is that a better way is to, one, get them invested in the process, but also by letting them have a say and have some input. And that really gets them invested in the process. But just staying with and say, no, you did good here, but you need to do better here. And just continuing to train them on just those little details and on the system, so that eventually you can kind of let go and let somebody else run that system for you, and then start working on higher level things.
It's so common though, isn't it? Like new business owner, you're like, yeah, I can do it all myself. I mean, we've been through a whole journey in building systems and processes up for Base. It's something that we didn't do well at the beginning. And when we opened our second and third locations, it was kind of forced upon us. So we've kind of been catching up a lot since then. But I think it's so common to think, it's just quicker and easier if I do it myself. But then if you have a 10-minute task, you might think, I can do it myself. Spend an hour or 2 hours training someone else to do it. Spend a whole day. And if they do that every day for a year, you've saved a lot of time. And I think it's, again, that's another mindset shift, which I think new gym owners really have, well, any business owner, but certainly I think it's common in the gym and the fitness industry. Oh, it's fine, I'll do it myself. And it's so common in our industry, certainly over here. Be interesting to know if this is the case in the States as well. When you get a great coach, packed PT schedule, busy classes, life is good. They're like, right, time to open up my own studio. And they open up a studio and it's a completely different skill set. It drives them absolutely nuts. They go from making really good money to losing money, and the whole thing collapses very, very quickly. And it's because they haven't really considered these things. And that's where, I know your podcast helps potential gym owners in the US, and ours does in Asia as well. But seeing this happen and seeing it's just not nice to see that happen. And every failed gym, every failed business is someone's dream. Maybe their life savings, maybe they borrowed money and everything else. But also it's not good for the wider industry. We are a very young, immature, developing industry. So it's just not good for anyone really having that happen. Obviously yours is a little bit more mature. I mean, is that something that you see happening your way as well?
All the time. I think it's probably one of the most common scenarios, which is why, I mean, it happened to me. I was training at a facility for 22 years, very successful, made, good money, had a good living. And then I struck out on my own and had a good following and said, oh, good, I'm going to be fine. I got clients thinking, I think I had 20 clients follow me. Right. And I was just, at that time, I was just renting space in a studio. I'm like, oh, this is easy. But then, through several changes, I wound up opening a bigger studio, which means I had to get employees and get trainers under me. And then it becomes a whole different ballgame. You do have to run it like a business. You do have to have systems. So, and which is the reason I started the podcast, really just to kind of save my own ass and my own business. So,
and help others along the way.
Exactly. And help people along the way so that they don't fall into that same trap. But, one thing I wanted to talk about that I see over here is that we're now getting our second round of PPP loans. So we've had a lot of money and a lot of financial help from the federal government available to owners. And I see some owners kind of, I call it swimming upstream, in that they're kind of holding out, waiting for things to go back to quote unquote normal. And so they're like, this is just going to be a phase, I'm going to wait it out, and then things are going to go back to normal, and then things will be like they were. And things are never going to be the same, right? The market has changed forever. And so this is the market now. So I see a lot of owners setting themselves up for failure, in that they're not approaching it, they're using that federal money as almost like a crutch and not really evolving their model or their business. Now, over in Asia, you don't get any federal help, right? So how does that impacted gyms and studios over there?
Yeah, it's such an interesting question. It's something that I've kind of reflected on a lot over the last year, as I'm sure like many people have. Like when you're going through something like this, which obviously nobody expected, like how do you respond to it? How do you develop? And it's just interesting seeing different people's responses, not just in the fitness industry, but just in life in general. We've had pretty much zero help from the government. This time round, actually, our staff got a small payout, which was great. The first time round, we were very generous. We'd had some good years leading up to it. I think we were a little bit too generous, I think. But luckily it did build up some goodwill. I think it helped us keep all of our staff, all of our, good staff at least. And so this time round, we couldn't quite do as much as we did last time, but we said, look, we are making a commitment to make sure everyone's going to be okay. However, we need to make that happen and make that work, whether it's through loans, whether it's through you sign a new contract to guarantee you'll stay a certain amount of time. We are making that pledge and that commitment, even though, we can't give the same financial help that we gave last time. So it kind of, and another thing I think is definitely worth saying is our landlords were fantastic to us here. So we got pretty much rent free across all of our locations. And that came from building a very good relationship with our landlords. Now I've spoken to gym owners in the States, most of which said it's kind of just a tenant landlord relationship and they don't really care who we are or what we do. What we've done, I think, quite well here at Base is not so much the first location, but the second and third. We sort out sort of partners, really, not just landlords, but people that actually wanted us in their space. So the first one was kind of like a co-working space, and they had this kind of like trendy food court type thing, and they wanted like a fitness edge to the vibe. And so it was a friend of my business partner who was starting this development. He wanted base in, he approached us, and we really did a partnership. We gave special deals to their tenants of the co-working space. We did events together, all of this kind of stuff. And it was the same for the third location that we opened up, which was in a central mall, sorry, quite old, quite dated. The mall was about 20, 30 years old. Doesn't matter for us. The space looked great. And they kind of wanted a bit of a young, fresh vibe, like a new brand in their space. And we fit the bill perfectly. And we don't need to be in the glitziest, shiniest mall, as long as when you walk into base, it looks great. And, there's certain things that we need, such as high ceilings and good light coming in. So that's really helped us out massively. And if our landlords had charged us full rent, we wouldn't be in as good position as we are now. The whole lack of government help thing is kind of interesting, because we knew from day one we'd probably get no or very little help, and it kind of changes your mindset. You're like, right, everything is on us. It's like that ultimate responsibility thing. It's like, no one's going to help me out here. We need to make this happen. And so from day one, you're like, bang, online coaching, let's do it. Online classes, boom, a week later. And everyone said, they were quite impressed with Base at how quickly we responded to the situation. Clients were really happy. They were excited. It was a confusing time, it was a difficult time, but suddenly Base, hey, we're there for you, we're doing something about it. And I kind of wonder, I would like to think, regardless of government help or not, we still would have done all those things, but there was certainly something it almost helped in a way, just knowing everything is on us, everything. And I think what we have seen in some countries, the UK is exactly the same. It's like, oh sweet, my staff are furloughed, they get 80% of their salary, I'm just going to sit back. And some of the gyms that I've been to in the States and the UK, and I follow online, I'm on their email list, nothing. No emails, no social media activity, or hardly any whatsoever. And I'm like, man, your brand is just going to disappear in your clients' minds. You are not going to be primed to pick up those new clients when you open up again. So, it's funny what you said about marketing cutting spending. That was the one thing that we kept super active. We did cut down some of our online spending, but we still spent some just to kind of keep the brand out there, just to bring people into the online training. But our marketing department was working overtime. The coaches didn't have that much to do. We got 28 coaches. So many of them did just chill at home and lived on savings or the money that we gave them. But the marketing department was going crazy all day, every day. And honestly, I enjoyed it. I really did. Like the first few days, we had a COVID case at Base. That's a whole nother story there that I won't go into. So the day after lockdown, we found out we had a COVID case. So that's another podcast for another day for sure. Once we got that out of the way, and I think my nerves just sort of settled on the whole thing, there was something kind of like exciting about it, like some entrepreneurial like spark just like lit up inside of me. And like a few weeks on, I was kind of buzzing and kind of pumped. And then now lockdown 2's come in, I just feel ready for it. There was no feeling like that. Of course we were disappointed, of course, but it's like, okay, we know what to do. We've been through this before. Let's kick everything into gear. We had some political protests outside one of our branches. It had to close for a few days. A year and a half ago, that might have affected me. It might have hit me. But this time it's like, bang, we've got our processes in place. Let's get the emails out to the clients. Let's make sure the front desk staff are all at home. Let's get a message out on social media. Like everything just like clicks into place nicely. And I kind of feel that like going through all of this is just giving me this layer of resistance. It's like I'm ready to take on the world. If I can do 2020, I can do everything. And I think that's been, a valuable experience in many ways.
Yeah, it kind of battle hardened you for sure. I think, I hate to say it, but I think sometimes here in the States we get spoiled. Matter of fact, I know we do.
Same in the UK.
And I can go on. That could be a whole podcast in itself. But I think that when you have that mentality, like it's just me, then you do whatever you have to do. And you get to work. And a lot of times it, like you said, it fires you up. You're like, yeah, let's do this. Let's make this work. Come on, we can do this. And you kind of rally your team around that. And I think that gives you an advantage over when you know that somebody's going to come in and help you out. And then I think there's another phenomenon that I have found curious here in States is that the whole virus mask, shutting down businesses has become this political thing where people are like, well, the government's not going to tell me what to do. And we've had gyms that have defied the shutdown order, and then the local authorities have had to come in and take action, yanking their business license, fining them just, you know, ridiculous amounts of money, and like I said, swimming upstream, you know, saying, you know, almost like denying the reality of COVID here in the States. And say what you want about the numbers or how you feel, but reality is reality, right? And business is business. So you have to operate your business in the current market it's in. So that's what I found curious. Did you have that over in Asia?
Not really. People are pretty obedient overall, and people kind of understood generally the importance of following the rules. It was mostly foreigners, to be honest with you, that were like, yeah, I'm not putting my mask on. But most foreigners here know the deal. It's very much a cultural thing. You know, Thailand has largely contained the virus. You know, even this second wave has only lasted 3 weeks or so, and it looks to be largely contained. Many different theories as to why that might be, but generally people here do follow the rules. They are pretty obedient with it all. And you know, again, that kind of has its pros and cons, but I feel like now with COVID, we've definitely seen the upside to that for sure. When you say, you know, is it fighting the government? Is that what they're doing? I feel like it's not a great way to be spending your energy, right? Like, you know,
Correct.
kind of choose your battles wisely, I think is probably good advice at this time. You know, like there's a battle to be made with your members. You know, let's fight to keep them like
Right.
excited and fit and, you know, strong and everything else and connected with the brand. You know, I think that's your energies are better spent elsewhere.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think, and I, you know, whatever side of the fence you fall on that political argument, to me, it's politics really don't have a place in your business, right? Because
Absolutely.
either way, whatever side you fall on, you're going to ostracize half of your demographic. And so no business wants to kill half of their customer base, you know. So I think it's just better to kind of walk that line and be as apolitical as you can. And it's hard, you know, because I get some clients, man, who are just
Sure.
hardliners one way or the other, and I'm like, look, you know, I'm just trying to stay open and get you fit and get you stronger and get you through this. You know, that's all I care about.
I have a question for you, Jim, and maybe have a think about this one. I don't know if you want to answer it publicly, but first of all, I'll say I absolutely agree. I have political opinions that I share with my friends that I absolutely
Mhm.
wouldn't say, certainly on social media, wouldn't say it at work or anything like that.
Mhm.
You know, I very much believe in that. And also as a foreigner here, as a guest in this country, it's certainly not my place to really say anything about that. So for me, there's even more reason to stay out of it. Maybe in the UK, maybe, perhaps I'd be a little bit more inclined. Have you had an obligation or have you been drawn into any like kind of social issues in the States with everything that's been going on? So like political, you know, maybe you don't have to say Democrats or Republicans, maybe you can kind of stay out of that. Have you been drawn into anything else? Because I know a lot of gyms in New York have certainly been drawn into making sort of public statements on these things, certainly in the UK as well. In Asia, absolutely not. And I'm kind of talking now, so I'll give you a chance to kind of think as I'm talking of what your response will be.
Well, I mean, it's easy. I think the thing that comes first to my mind is the mask. I mean, when we first opened up, um, we were allowed to be open, but masks were not required. But we provided masks, and staff wore masks, but the clients didn't. Some clients did. It was their choice. And then where we are, they mandated the mask so we could stay open, because I was afraid they were going to shut us down. But they said you can stay open, but the clients have to wear a mask. And so it was it really evened out. We had a couple of clients quit because they didn't want to wear the mask, and then we had several clients come in because we were wearing a mask. You know, the mask was mandated. So I mean, for a while it was getting kind of tenuous when it was our call to make the mask or not. So then I was going to have to take a stand, which made me really nervous, to be honest with you. um, just because I'm not thinking from a political standpoint, I'm thinking from a business standpoint, and being able to stay open. And so, but when they took that decision out of our hands, then I just had to say, hey, look, this is what we got to do to stay open. So it made the call a little bit easier. So that was probably the closest I had to come to taking a stand on something. But the St. Louis County executive stepped in and said, no, you can stay open. And we're lucky because they allow gyms to stay open, but they close restaurants. So we counted
I
ourselves
agree with
very
that.
fortunate.
I
Yeah.
mean, here we've just had the opposite. So restaurants have been open, but gyms haven't. And what's been frustrating about that is that, we had to close our business, yet I feel as though the environment hasn't been created for the virus to really get under control. You go into restaurants and everyone's kind of crowded around a table, and you're like, well, if that's allowed, then, surely gyms should be allowed. But then
Right.
again, it just goes back to that point of like, well, nothing I can do about it. I'm not going to start a protest outside Government House. It's probably not going to win many friends. And yeah, ultimately it's out of my control. So just have to make do with what we have.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I had a local guy on the podcast, and what he did is he organized all of the local studio owners together and got them in front of the local government and the health department to say, hey, look, these studios are a different animal than the big box gyms, and therefore should be lumped into the same category. And so he really lobbied the politicians and the health department to allow specifically the mini gyms and the boutique gyms, smaller studios, to stay open and put them in a different category than the big box gyms, which I thought was really good. So
Yep.
when I promoted that podcast on Facebook, I said, the title was Why You Have to Be an Activist for Your Gym. Not only did they reject every promo that I put up because it said activists, but then they banned me from advertising on Facebook.
Really?
Because of it. I just yesterday, today's the January 26th, just yesterday, I was able to get off the ban, but it wasn't easy. I had to jump through several hoops to and say, I'm going to be a good boy and all of those things. But yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there's some and for me, not being able to advertise on social media during this time when we're going after it hard, fortunately, we had a bunch of New Year's ads that had been approved. We had several we had 6 campaigns that had been approved prior to the ban that they were allowing to continue to run. And so that marketing got us through until I could get us off the ban. So it's a pretty tough landscape to navigate here stateside.
So you try and stay apolitical, and then you just kind of get dragged into it one way or another, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
again, there's a whole other conversation about all of that, sort of the influence that Facebook has, the important part that they play. We've always had that to market our gyms, but it's I mean, is that the best way, do you think, to get new clients where you are?
Yeah, what we did was we created a new website, and then we hooked up the marketing software to the website. So we use Facebook and we use social media and Google ads to drive traffic to the website. And then the website, we're able to capture their lead information and follow up on them. So that's the way we operate. And I do find that Google ads is pretty effective. I mean, the cost per lead for us has been significantly lower on Google ads than Facebook ads. But I think, I think it depends on, where you are and how you word and what your campaign happens to be at that time.
Yeah, I think it's just, again, I speak to a lot of gyms who are just sort of throwing money all over the place, Instagram ads, Facebook ads, Google, and just not really tracking it. I think, whether you're based in the States or here, just sort of so important to just kind of track the leads that you have coming through, how many of those convert, what's the quality of those leads, like what's the lifetime value of the customer, just to kind of stay on top of that. So we found that Google ads was not giving us a great return, and we'd actually started ranking very well on SEO. So it's something that we built up over a lot of time. We wrote a lot of blog posts. We were featured in a lot of other kind of magazines and websites that kind of started linking into us. We found that we actually ranking very well organically. So that was one of the things that we did cut with COVID. We were spending a certain amount. It wasn't really giving us a great return, and we were getting leads just coming through anyway. So we were like, okay, let's cut that one and let's put a bit more into Facebook. And that's been completely fine for us. We've actually had more leads coming through on the website when we were spending money on Google Ads. So I think that the message there, I think, is just to play around with these things, understand how much a lead costs, the quality of the leads that come through on different channels as well. Again, it's going to be different on Facebook, right? If you've got a free session on Facebook, that's typically a low quality lead. If it's someone who's typed in personal training Bangkok, that's going to be a high quality lead. Lots of things to consider. And as we mentioned earlier before, there's a lot of coaches that don't even consider any of this. They're like, I'm a good coach. Let's set up a gym. Boom, let's go.
Yeah. Or they run an ad and they don't get anything back. And so their conclusion becomes, well, the ad didn't work. Instead of maybe tweaking the ad, maybe if I change the wording or change the imagery. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, that's a whole podcast in itself.
Yeah.
But this has been great. And I always close out with 3 questions of my guests. And it's my favorite part of the show because we get to peek behind the curtain. That is Jack Thomas. And my first question is, what has been your most successful failure? And by that, I mean, at the time, it seemed like a devastating loss that you weren't going to be able to recover from, but you were able to take life lessons from it that propelled you to greater success down the road.
Good question. I can think of a few. I would say okay. I can think of I was thinking of a few small ones with base, and there's been a lot of little ones, every day there's little ones.
Right.
There was a few that sort of jumped out, but the big one for me for sure was and we haven't really touched on this, but the failure of my clothing export business. So I was running that for about 6 years or so. And it was doing very well. I got very complacent. I had a couple of staff working, so I pretty much just took a step back. And then when the 2008, 2009 economic crash hit, it took a sharp downturn, and I was kind of at a real crossroads. It was like, shall I put energy into the business and try and make it work again? Shall I go back to the UK? And it was then that I decided to get into the fitness industry. And I think the thing that kind of really made me decide that I didn't want to do that again is I thought, could I make it work? Probably, but my motivation just isn't there. It's just not there anymore. So I was happy to just chalk that down to experience. It gave me 5, 6 great years. I did earn some good money, although it was losing money at the end, and just sort of take all my experiences, all my knowledge from that failure into my next step. And I kind of went from, having a pretty successful business. By the time I'd got qualified as a personal trainer and came back, I had nothing. I had £5,000 of credit card debt, and that was all I had to my name. And but honestly, coming back then, having gone through that journey with the clothing export business, having got qualified in an industry that I really wanted to be in, it was actually like a real magical time. It was, I love what I do now and I wouldn't give it up for anything in the world, but actually going back to them was a very simple time. I am a coach. I want to work with people to get them fitter, stronger, healthier. And it was certainly the failure of the clothing export business that kind of set all of that up.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great point, because who's it? Ariana Huffington said failure isn't the opposite of success. It's part of success. It's a stepping stone to success. So I like that answer. And then my next question is, in your time in the fitness industry, COVID is exempt, but what has been the biggest surprise that you've had to deal with that you did not see coming?
I think, great question. Obviously COVID would be the obvious answer. I think it was, I would say the biggest surprise would be setting up my own studio base and realizing that everything I'd learned in my previous job, whilst it helped me a lot, didn't prepare me enough. I still had so much to learn. I became pretty good at running a gym, recruiting coaches, kind of maintaining company culture and keeping a steady ship. And so I thought, and that experience was absolutely invaluable. I was not that coach who was just like, right, I'm opening a gym. I kind of knew what it meant to run a gym. But the biggest surprise for me, I think, was going into base and realize, wow, I haven't built a brand before. I haven't recruited a whole team. I haven't designed a concept. I haven't built a bathroom, which caused us massive problems at the beginning. And I think that was like a bit of a shock, but it was a really almost like a useful shock that kind of set me up for future success. Just having that realization that I thought I knew a lot, I really didn't know that much at all. And God, in a year, I'm going to learn a lot as well. And so kind of for every year, for every step of the journey, I'm now able to look back and think, yeah, I didn't really know that much at all. And kind of having that realization was a shock, but was really important for me. And I kind of know now that in a year or two, I'm going to look back to where I am today and say, yeah, I didn't really know that much. And that's kind of, again, shifted my mindset, and I think in a very positive way.
Yeah, and I think that's the typical entrepreneurial journey, right? You think I know I had an idea of what I wanted my gym to look like, and but like going in and talking to contractors and building it out and building the brand and like all the things you just said. It's like, yeah, you think you have an idea until you basically get hit in the face, right? And then you have to kind of adjust on the fly and learn on the fly and reach out and ask for help. I think that's the most important lesson that I was able to take from opening my business,
Mm.
is that I got to ask for help, because if it's just me and my knowledge base, I'm going to fail, you know?
And if you
So,
don't get that realization, then you're in trouble, right? Like, and
right.
it has to hit you quickly, and it definitely hit me pretty quickly, for
Yeah.
sure. I think if not, if there's a level of arrogance there, if I'm like, no, I'm still the man that knows it all, I obviously
Hmm.
wouldn't be where I am today. I'm sure Base would have gone down the drain by now.
Yep. And then my final question is, where do you go for your personal and professional development?
Podcast has been a big one for me. I have, through the podcast, from everything you've told me, Jim, I think it's very much the same for you. Through the
Hmm.
podcast, I've met such great people.
Hmm.
It's definitely provided mentors for me and just like really close friends in the
Hmm.
industry. I'd say we kind of mentor each other a little bit. They might bounce a few ideas off me, I'll bounce a few ideas off them. We really want to go to Singapore. That's a big dream of ours. We wanted to do it in 2020. It looks like it's going to be 2021 now. I've now got some really solid friends and connections in Singapore who are, more than happy to help out with that. So that's kind of been huge. And also not only happy to help out, but they're at a more developed stage than we are at. On the flip side, some of them want to expand to Bangkok. So they're coming and asking myself as well. And obviously I'm very, very happy to help with that. And we've done collaborations with some big studios in Singapore. So the podcast has really been huge on many, many levels. I
Hmm.
do a lot of reading. Yeah, certainly listening to podcasts and getting into that kind of inspired me to set up my own podcast as well. And then I
Hmm.
think, you kind of have a few close mentors, right? I mean, one of which is my uncle, for sure, especially in the early stages of the business, because he'd set up a business himself, even just things like a shareholders agreement. How do I do that? What's that all about? What advice would you give for that? He's
Hmm.
employed staff before. He's kind of gone through his own journey. He's left a company to set up another company in the same space. So it was great to hear his thoughts on that. And what I have found interestingly as well is like some of my earlier mentors, as my journey has progressed and as I've personally developed, I kind of have less to learn from them. But then
Hmm.
as long as you put yourself out there, and the podcast has been really amazing for this, you kind of meet other people that are a step ahead of you, or maybe on your level in a different industry even.
Hmm.
Another I would say a big mentor of mine recently has been someone that I've done some consultancy work for. So he set up a resort. I helped him design his gym concept for that resort, but he has a very well-known chain of restaurants around Asia. So he's just got a wealth of experience in a completely different industry, but fascinating hearing his insights as well. If I'd met him 6 years ago, I don't know, we wouldn't have got on as well. There wouldn't have been as much that I could have really learned from him. I wouldn't have been in a position to do the work that I did for him. So yeah, as
Hmm.
I've gone along, your mentors kind of shift and change, right? As you
Yeah.
develop and as you grow. So yeah, quite a long answer there. I know there's a lot of sources, but yeah, podcast, reading, and certainly mentorship, if I had to summarize it.
Yeah, I like that philosophy with the mentors and evolving, because I think the key, because I've met a lot of great people through the podcast, and we've become friends, have ongoing relationships. I reach out to them on a regular basis. And I think the secret of that is, early on, I was a big fan of the Tim Ferriss podcast. And so when I reach out for people, I always go in with the philosophy of, what can I do to help you? Or I can do this. Will that benefit you? Is that of some benefit to you? So when I approach people, I want to know how can I help them? And then we start working on collaboration. So like to your point with the guy in the restaurant, 6 years ago, you wouldn't have had the skill set to help him design gyms in his resorts. But now that you do, you're like, okay, I can help you out with that. And in exchange, he's willing to help you out with some further your business acumen. So yeah, it's creating relationships, that continue to grow and evolve. I think that's the key to anybody who's successful, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's if you just continue to put yourself out there, I don't believe in the universe putting things in my path or anything like that, but it just seems to work out. If you put yourself out there, if you make an effort, it just kind of seems to be that when you kind of need that person, one just kind of falls into your path. And I think that's just through, yeah, it's through having the right kind of conversations, putting out the right kind of energies, whatever you want to call it, right? And I couldn't agree more about the kind of giving first. We've done podcasts on it on the Fitness Business Asia podcast, just going into any partnership with that in mind. And I look at the partnership that we've had with Adidas. We started working with them before we opened the first gym. One of my business partners kind of made the introduction, and it works so well, and it still works to this day because we both go in with that spirit. That's like, what can I do for Adidas? What, you've got an event on soon. What can we do to provide like a workout? What can we do to provide coaches, a space for you to do photo shoots? And they're saying the same thing to us, like, hey, do you need any kit for your trainers? And it's been like that from day one, and it just works so well. And I've realized that's really not always the case. So when you go into a partnership, go with the spirit of giving. If they go in with the same attitude, that's where great things happen. If one of you's not on the same page, it becomes obvious quite quickly. And, as with most partnerships, it breaks down pretty quickly as well.
Correct. I couldn't agree with you more. Well, Jack, this has been great, man. We got to do this again. This has been fun. I don't know if anybody else will enjoy this, but I enjoyed the hell out of it. Yeah,
we will. That's the main thing.
Yeah. So where can people go to get in touch with you, find more about you and Base and the podcast?
Yeah, it's two tags, if you want to call them that. Fitness Business Asia. So that's on LinkedIn or Instagram or .com. Base Bangkok. And again, that's either .com or you can find that on Facebook/Base Bangkok or Instagram/Base Bangkok. So yeah, very easy to find me or Base through that. Feel free to reach out through LinkedIn is probably the best way. Drop a message, say hi, mention the podcast, and it would be good to connect there with anyone that wants to reach out.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, like I said, it is 9:20 a.m. there, and it's 10:20 p.m. here. It's 9:20 a.m. here, 10:20 p.m. your time. So I'm having my coffee, and you're taking your melatonin. So
well, I'm feeling kind of pumped now. I've had a good conversation here, so maybe we won't go to bed just yet. It's been a lot of fun, Jim. Thanks for the opportunity. I do really appreciate it.
It's been great. We definitely have to do it again.
Sure thing. I'm game.
All right, man. All right. Thanks. Have a good night.
Yeah. Cheers. Good luck.